All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Warren Wheaton. I'm the District 7 legislator. I'm here today with our recorded webinar with our newly elected Kiowa Indian Council coordinator, Mr. Joseph Granado. Um, so some rules for the webinar, as always. We are this is a discussion between me and my guest, and I've formulated some questions, but if there are questions that any of the attendees may want to ask, at the bottom of the Zoom screen, you'll see a Q&A box with basically a little text bubble with a question mark in it. You can click on that, submit your questions, and we will ask those questions to the coordinator himself. If ever, Joseph, if he ever has a question or something, he can always raise his hand. As I previously discussed with him, this is a two-way discussion. And this is a part of our monthly webinar series, our effort as a District 7 office to have discussions and get information out for citizens to access via on YouTube. And so we're going to continue on. Uh, good afternoon, Joseph. How are you doing today? And if you'd go ahead and give us a quick introduction of who you are and where you come from.
Oh, thank you, Legislature Week on. Again, my name is Joseph Granado. I am the 2025 KIC coordinator that was elected at the annual meeting, I believe on Saturday, April 5th. I reside in Carnegie, Oklahoma. I come from the Hangtall, Tanadal, Dogamaw, and Sigahoodle families. So I do have a degree in environmental studies, or is it now is reframed environmental conservation and management. But yeah, a little bit about me.
Okay. So, what made you interested in becoming the coordinator for the Kiowa Indian Council?
Um, just a lack of proper leadership by the former KIC coordinator at the time. Um, there were, issues and concerns that, arose out of the Kiowa tribe that were, of concern. And, as any community member, would like is for those issues to be, discussed and addressed and everything, and, have that advocacy, um, you know, presented, on the community's behalf, by, the KIC coordinator, if, they're able to do so. Uh, and that was kind of one of the reasons why I wanted to put my hat in the ring, in that respect, because of, those things that, I, saw and, everyone else saw. So, it's only been, I believe, little less than a month or coming up to a month. And we'll see how it goes as time progresses.
What do you see as the primary role within the Kiowa government of the Kiowa Indian Council? What is its purpose and its responsibility?
So, uh, as for the Kiowa Indian Council's body, we, as a unified front, a uniformed and unified front, we have the capability of putting forth legislation just as much as the legislative branch does. It's just it requires more participation. Oftentimes, it requires 400 signatures for a petition. And in turn, it requires, I believe, around 600 individuals to participate in an election to vote on some legislation that was put forth to be placed on a ballot. The KIC body also has the power and authority given to the KIC body by the Constitution, I believe, to set policies and procedures for the tribe, to also initiate the process to amend the Constitution, as well as giving the authority to the chairman of the tribe to enter into compacts, contracts, and all things like that. So essentially, to reiterate, the KIC body does have almost just as much power, but it's a balance of powers through all branches of government. So that's my view on that.
Yeah. You know, my view, and maybe you can say what you agree with or disagree with. My view is that the Kiowa Indian Council is supposed to be the voice, one of the, well, the voice for the people. Like people are not getting representation from their elected leadership, either with the executive branch and or the legislative branch. They can go to the Kiowa Indian Council and bring a resolution, hopefully get support uh, on policy, and that policy is, if it's voted upon by the Kiowa Indian Council, shall be enacted by laws within the legislature and enforced by the executive branch. So that's how I see those their purpose. Would you agree with that? Maybe they set the policy for the tribe, meaning they want to see something done about. I'll use an example. They want to enter into a compact with the state of Oklahoma on what do you call that? Off-track betting, or what's the major theme now? Like sports betting. If we want to enter into a compact with the state, that question gets fed through the Kiowa Indian Council and it's voted upon. And if all the people agree with that, then it shall be enacted in law. A law shall be written by the legislature, and then codes are enforced by the executive branch. And if ever there's a violation or a perceived violation of that law, that goes to the court for interpretation. Is that a good way to kind of summarize? Do you agree with that statement?
Yes, no, absolutely. I do agree with that. I see, and maybe others might see it as well, as the KIC body is essentially a
Hmm.
a centralized area for Kiowa individuals in the community, to be advocates, for ourselves.
Absolutely.
While we may not
Absolutely.
be heard by, the executive branch or the legislative branch, coming together as a unified body, um, with proper leadership of a coordinator, any coordinator, um, past, present, and future, we can, be advocates for ourselves. If there are issues and things that the administration is doing that a majority do not like, you know, you know, that's where the KIC body comes into play, because there's also a branch of government, that has authority of sorts, within reason, um, to just, simple as starting out as like questioning things, and maybe petitioning against a form of legislation, whether that would be through a referendum or an initiative, or writing letters, putting out memos, to talk about or discuss a topic in which maybe many others may not agree with, that the apologies that the administration is doing. I know past, I'm almost 30, but I hear stories. I didn't get to really witness it myself, but I know, former administrations, there weren't the greatest leaderships beforehand. And, I think if at the time there was that understanding of the body, the KIC body, and that proper organized leadership, that there could have been more advocacy uh, to call and question things by those respective administrations. Because it's all a balance of power throughout the
Sure.
whole
Sure.
government.
Absolutely.
And in regards to the example you gave for the compact with, like, this gaming compact with the state of Oklahoma, um, from my understanding, the KIC first has to approve for the tribe to enter in that compact or contract or agreement, um, whether verbal or written. And from there, if it is approved, I think the next process is it goes to the legislative branch. They authorize that as well, and then put it forth into law. But in short, I do agree. The KIC body essentially is an advocate for those who do not feel that they are heard.
Yeah. So, in your new role as a coordinator of the Kiowa Indian Council, what do you see as your primary roles and responsibilities?
My primary role as of now, again, like I said, I've only been a month in it. I'm still learning. Uh, as they say, you just take one slice, not the whole piece, because you'll get overwhelmed. Um, as far as not my, or well, I am coordinator, yes, but any coordinator in the future, coming in the future, their responsibilities to, set, uh, meetings, call forth meetings, whether that would be through the request of a petition by any KIC body member, um, or by the legislative branch who wishes to call for a special meeting. And that is the requirement of the coordinator to then, once accepted that petition and that request, to call for a special meeting. And any resolutions that are submitted by the KIC body to the coordinator, the office of the council, um, then the coordinator, for 45 days prior before an annual meeting or potential call for a special meeting, 45 days, those have to be submitted. Those are reviewed, and then they are posted 30 days before the annual meeting or the call for a special meeting. So yeah, that's the pretty much the roles and responsibilities that I see as of now for a coordinator. That may change in a couple months. We'll see. Like again, I'm still learning it all, navigating through it. But nonetheless, I'm still willing to learn.
Yep. Thanks, Mr. Granado. And you brought up, so while we're on that point here, you brought up receiving resolutions. If a citizen wants to submit a resolution for a future upcoming meeting, what's that process look like, and kind of your role in vetting those resolutions to make sure they're, I mean, what kind of advice can you give citizens to kind of ensure that their resolution is going to be heard and is going to be put on placed on the agenda?
Well, I've yet to receive resolutions. Again, like I said, it's just been a month in, but the process that I would like as far as an organized process, because historically it hasn't been too well organized um, when there's been a coordinator in play. So hoping that in the coming future, having a system set up to accept resolutions seeking submission and vetting those resolutions um, through a survey process in which individuals have to answer questions, and they can upload their resolutions within that form. Um, and then from there, hoping that they leave contact information, because it is important that contact information is given when submitting a resolution, because if in that review process of looking at those resolutions, there's an error or there's a typo, uh, or because the coordinator may not know what the topic that the author is trying to get across. So the coordinator may need to ask some questions so that resolutions can be better strengthened, uh, verbiage could be added or removed. So that's, I think that's kind of important in its process when submitting those resolutions and when the coordinator reviews those.
Um, are there any resources, websites, or even a page, to kind of do, for people to kind of access a draft or example resolution before submitting them to you?
So as of now, I believe there is still on the Kiowa Tribe website under the KIC webpage, there is a template that shows kind of how to formulate and structure one's resolution. Uh, and even then, if one's not certain, I believe under the legislative branch's webpage, they have laws that they enacted, so it could kind of be worded and structured that way. While it won't be considered a law uh, when it's presented at an annual meeting or special meeting because it goes through a whole separate process. Um, as far as structure goes, those are some examples or templates that one can look at, or even just if they have access to technology and the internet, just a simple Google search, could help in that way. As of right now, I am looking to update a little bit the current template that is posted on the Kiowa Tribe West website. So that's, it's a little bit more, I guess, user friendly for those, when they decide to create a resolution.
When a resolution is submitted, will you kind of talk about a little bit about I mean, because I'm not a lawyer, you're not a lawyer, but when they submit a resolution, what's your plan for ensuring that those resolutions are valid and able to be heard in an agenda?
So um, I don't have, as far as coordinator, the Office of the Council does not have additional staff. It is just a coordinator in and of itself. You do have an event planner. I believe right now it is Miss Devetta Gimisaddle. However, my recollection, I believe it was 2024 or 2023. I may be wrong, but I believe at the time there was a resolution that was presented forth at an annual meeting to have 7 representatives on a board of sorts for the KIC to specifically kind of just review and look through those resolutions that are submitted, just to kind of have more eyes and more assistance in helping the coordinator, look through those. I'm hoping to continue to work with the legislative branch and the election commission to try to, supplement that assistance that is needed. Because, like you said, you're not a lawyer, I'm not a lawyer. Um, while I do have some academic history and policy, uh, it's still nonetheless, important to have that assistance, because you never know how many resolutions you might get at a time. It may fluctuate from, 3 to 20, you know. So, but as far as, that process goes, that's what I'm looking forward to having to help with that assistance in reviewing those resolutions that would be submitted.
So one of the main things that our citizens from District 7 have been advocating for is not knowing when the meetings are, access to those meetings. Um, what's your vision for, communication with citizens of the Kiowa tribe?
So, at this day and age, majority of individuals, have, access to technology. We have a phone, social media. So one way as far as, reaching, District 7 is to have, postings made on the Kiowa Tribe's Facebook page, maybe even the local newsletter, um, or if applicable, sending out notices through mail to citizens that have, mailing addresses on file that are up to date. So that is one way of reaching, citizens. As far as, participating, I know personal matters usually come into play in which an individual might have wanted to initially go to an annual meeting or a special meeting, but, something arises. Most as far as video from personally, while it may not be the viewpoint of many others, um, I don't feel that it is necessary to post something public in that manner, and that should be internal tribal affairs, especially if we're wanting to promote and become, a, a sovereign, tribal, government. Why can't we practice that for ourselves? because I'm sure as many, others have seen, when it comes to Facebook, you see many individuals who aren't even in the country or on the other side of the US, commenting, asking questions that are tribal affairs, Kiowa tribal affairs. Uh, and that's that aspect as far as sharing publicly. Now, as far as participation goes from KIC citizens, I would like to have a system set up in place um, eventually to allow individuals who wish to, speak on a topic at hand or on a resolution that is going to be presented to submit a letter pertaining to that resolution that they might have questions about or concerns about, so that they can submit those. And those could be potentially, hopefully, um, discussed at a annual meeting or a special meeting. Um, so as far as right, that's the idea, that's the hope, but it's we'll see how it goes when that time comes.
So, in terms of having a special meeting, what's your vision for like issues like I know that as a legislator, I think it's going to be put out here pretty quick that, a special meeting is being organized. What issues are going to be heard at that special meeting if once it's organized and scheduled?
I believe I don't offhand, I don't know specifically as far as 2025 resolutions, but I believe the hope is to have 2024 resolutions that were presented at the 2024 annual meeting would be discussed and presented at a future special meeting, hopefully sometime this year, hopefully soon. Uh, that is still a work in progress as of right now. Hoping to have something put out soon. Um, I believe those 2024 resolutions range from amending the Constitution um, to discussing policy, updating KIC policy and procedures, um, as well as blood quantum. So those are some topics. I believe a 2025 topic will probably pertain to the same thing, blood quantum, from what I've heard, and then also expansion, an expansion project for the tribe. So those are some topics that will potentially most likely be discussed at a call for a special meeting this
And
year.
I think it's important to clarify something. I think that those people that have submitted resolutions for 2024 and 2025 would need to resubmit those to you. Uh, those just don't simply carry over. So you're asking for everybody to resubmit those for a special meeting if they want them to be heard. I think it's important we clarify that in case, there's
Yeah.
any ambiguity about that.
No, yes, absolutely. Only 2024 resolutions that were submitted and 2025 resolutions that we're seeking to be discussed at the
And
annual.
then new submissions will also be heard too.
Yes. Yep.
So,
Absolutely.
question, if all these resolutions come in, if we were to hear all of them, do you see the annual meeting or special meeting carrying over to 2 days, perhaps? Is that possible?
It is possible. We did have our annual meeting last year, I believe, took a whole business day, all 8 hours. Um, Hopefully, with a special meeting, it could be a bit more streamlined, more organized, so that it does not take as long as it did last year at the annual meeting. So, but depending, we'll see. Most likely, it might have to end up being another special meeting, depending on how many resolutions are presented and discussed, and how long the meeting takes. So, but that's ultimately up to the body if they decide that they want to table those resolutions to discuss at another time, and if they want a motion to for another meeting.
Um, would you kindly share your vision for a good meeting of the Kiowa Indian Council? Like, what do you see as a successful meeting? What's going to make the Kiowa Indian Council successful? What's your vision for the council?
Well, uh, there's a vision and there's reality. um, well, the vision and the hope is that the authors that did submit the resolutions are present so that they can discuss their respective resolution and answer any questions, or concerns um, from the body that they might have, as far as questions go, and try to keep that within a timely manner. Because oftentimes, historically, when discussions, well, they tend to go from questions to discussions, and oftentimes personal opinions and voices come into play. And that's not to, uh, you know, dismiss those personal concerns or viewpoints. It's just ultimately, as it pertains, to meeting in any meeting, we need to, stay on topic and everything, because ultimately, apart from my own opinion or anyone's own opinion, it's the collective voices through vote, that matters most and everything. So I'm hoping that that's a little bit more organized in a future special meeting or an annual meeting, so that things are discussed, and that process is a little bit more organized and a little bit more in a timely manner, so that we're not having to be at a meeting for 8 hours, because no one wants to be at a meeting for that long.
Um, the KIC is the fourth branch of our Kiowa government. How do you see the Kiowa Indian Council working together to kind of hold up? I almost see it as a table. Each branch is a leg holding up that table. How do you see the Kiowa Indian Council being successful in working with the other three branches of government?
Communication is key, and that relationship, trying to be as professional and respectful as possible as well in that process, and just having a good working relationship with those branches of government, because it takes everyone to make the tribe successful, and trying not to let personal issues at hand interfere, because oftentimes I know in politics it's going to happen, nonetheless, when it comes to emotion, um, because you know any administration ultimately can impact the lives of KIC citizens. Um, so I think the KIC, as far as coordinator goes, and even a unified body is trying to work to the best of their ability, the best we can, to have a good working relationship with those other three branches of government, so that we can all be successful and work towards the common good of the tribe.
I agree with your statement. As far as like having good communication, I think that's something we've lacked from the two previous. I was elected in 2022, so the two other previous coordinators, it seemed to be a lack of communication with them on, just kind of talking to us about what we can do to prepare our districts for the upcoming meeting, share information out there. And as a District 7, I have the largest district, and I'm open to like sharing your invitations, but it takes a lot of pre-planning. We can't do that last minute. It's got to be well thought out, well stated, and then stick to our deadlines about when we're going to have meetings, when the resolutions are going to be due, and just having clear-eyed communication to everyone, I think, is important. And really just talking with us. I'll be open as a legislator having a monthly meeting with you just to kind of touch base, see how you're doing, and see what, as a branch, what can we do to work together and make sure that we collaborate. Not, you know, just working together. It's not to, try to um, the legislative branch is not in charge of the Kiowa Indian Council, but there are areas that we can work together on to push policy forward. And I think people often feel, well, the Kiowa Indian Council is the boss. And no, it's one of the branches. This is their forum to bring policy to the table and hopefully have it worked on or enacted by the legislature and or executive branch. But ultimately, it is not in charge of the legislature or the executive branch or the judicial branch. We all should be working in concert together. Do you think that's a good way to look at it?
Absolutely. I totally agree with that statement. Communication is key. It's vital, when it comes to the success, of the tribe or just, any matter at hand or any issue that is seeking to be, worked on and improved. So,
Well, I know that we want to, in terms of the budget and future, maybe we can have collaborate and have a community meeting online and or um, in person, maybe in the Tulsa or Oklahoma City area to kind of talk about the upcoming budget, talk about the upcoming resolutions, and just to kind of get information out there for people to uh, to hear and listen to. I think this is a good forum. While people may not join in our webinars in live time, they are looking at them on the YouTube channel. But I think it's important we get that information out there. Joseph, do you have any questions of me as a legislator?
um, no, not at this time. I really don't. But I would like to comment on you bringing up the budget. I believe 2024 there was an issue with a budget that was not properly presented to the KIC body at the time. I believe the 2024 meeting. There was a little bit of uproar by the KIC body because there was no budget narrative that was given so that the people can make a better informed decision when it comes to voting on the budget. Um, you might correct me if I'm wrong. I believe there was a law, a transparency act that was passed in sometime October of 2023 that
Yep, I was a
pertained.
sponsor for that law.
Okay. Yes, yes.
And you're
And
exactly
I
right.
believe,
That was a law passed to create transparency around the budget. However, we also we left the law broad for a reason because it goes back to a discussion with the executive branch. They felt like we were telling them how to do their job. And we said, we're not trying to tell you how to do your job, but we want there to be some transparency in sharing details of the budget. And the budget was 31 pages at the time. And they were like, how are we going to share all these details? I said, well, you just publish a booklet with the line items in there so people can see and kind of go through it. And they published a booklet, but it was not a line item booklet. It was just kind of a snapshot of each individual department's budget. And
yeah,
so that was while it kind of moved transparency a little further forward, it didn't give them a breakdown of what people are making, where's money being spent, what's the plan for this, the narrative. So that was supposed to be changed this year. So, and
right.
we're still working on that at the time.
Okay, yeah, because and I don't think it's necessarily as far as telling the executive branch or any executive branch as far as current administration or future administration how to do the job. It's just, as any community member such as myself, and others, there are concerns. There will always be concerns when it comes to, spending. Uh, just to kind of give an example of, the Trump administration, but I wanted to bring it up in this conversation. Um, but there's budget cuts that the federal government is doing, and that's not to say that's what the tribe or the citizens want, the Kiowa tribal citizens want. It's just, as you stated, we just want a little bit more transparency on where these funds are being allocated to, because there might be concerns when it comes to a certain amount of funds going, to a pool that might raise some eyebrows by some individuals. Um, like why isn't one department supported more than another? And I believe I think a narrative of sorts was presented at the 2025 meeting. I don't know if it was discussed. I was a little late, um, but I believe there was a booklet that was presented and put on the tables at the 2025 annual meeting. It's just I don't
Okay.
think it was just verbally mentioned to the body at the
Articulated.
time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but like nonetheless, when it comes, and I actually kind of do have a question. If if individuals, Kiowa tribe, citizens weren't too on as far as, funding allocated to, maybe certain departments, if a majority were to vote no for that budget, what what does that look like, for the tribe? Does the tribe cease operating altogether, or are some programs impacted more than others, and the tribe, still functioning?
That's a great question. We would go back to previous year's funding allocation until a budget is approved by the people. So that's what the rule has been in the past. Um, but yes, you're exactly right. Like if we don't get a budget approved, we kind of it goes back to the previous year's planning budget. Um, and so the tribes keeps operating because we can't not provide services to the people, but we have to develop ways to kind of go back to the drawing board. Unfortunately, with this budget process, it's like a continuing resolution with the federal government. It's either a pass or fail. Um, there's no line item approval. Like the federal government, I know tribal members have mentioned, well, I want line item approval for individual budgets. Well, what does that look like? We really can't make a spending plan based on, what if you approve the executive branch's budget, but you disapprove the legislative branch's budget? What does that look like? What do we have to go back to the drawing board and have another election to get a budget approved for those individual budgets? So it becomes very, very complicated. Whereas the federal level, Congress approves the budget through the House and through the Senate. And so once that's approved, then they're the people that approve that. Um, Unfortunately, if you deny the budget, then funding goes back to the previous year's, the last approved budget's funding levels temporarily until we get a spending plan worked out.
Yeah, and as of right now, majority of programs rely on um, like
Six
638
through
grants, or just, grants in general. So if
correct.
majority of citizens were to vote no, um, let's just say they were, it was their silent protest. Let's just say it was their silent protest against
Hmm.
um, and against any administration. Um, those grants won't necessarily be impacted because a budget wasn't passed. It would most likely be, revenue that was gained, from the tribe that might be impacted.
Correct. We're talking about tribal revenue. The
Okay.
federal dollars, we have to have those people know what we're getting in terms of like federal grants. So people don't understand that a 638 grant has usually is a funding agency of the BIA, that they are handing money down to tribes, higher education, for example. That money, we find out, we get an award letter in the fall. This is what your awarding level looks like this year. When we put that on the budget, we share that on the budget so people will know what higher education is receiving because we have to be transparent with the people what we're getting money wise that's revenue coming into the tribe. However, we have no control over that dollar amount. So we find that out from the federal level through their funding agency. This is what you're going to receive for the yearly allocation. We share that on the budget because we want people to know, but technically we don't have any kind of control over the dollar amount. But we have to have the people's approval on that, so they know what kind of revenue is coming in from that funding agency. I hope that's clear.
Yeah, and yeah, it is. And uh just to kind of ask again, and just to clarify first, so I understand a little bit better. and viewers that might be listening. If like I said, if they were to vote no, those 638 grants
We'd still
won't get
get the
impacted.
money. It
You'll
would
still
not
get the
be
money.
impacted.
You won't be
Yeah,
impacted. Okay,
yeah, yeah.
just that revenue.
We
Okay,
we would still get the funding grant, the funding amount from the federal government because we're not going to turn that money back. Um,
right,
it's
right.
still coming. It's just gets put on the budget still.
Okay, all right. Yeah.
Well, Joseph, I thank you for your time today, and I wish you all the best being the KIC coordinator. I would like to kind
Appreciate
of
it.
have a standing meeting with you maybe once a month just to kind of touch base on how you're doing. I'll get
Yeah.
with my office manager. We'll get that scheduled so we can kind of at least have a conversation once a month on,
Oh,
where are there areas we can collaborate on. So,
yeah. Yeah, and like you mentioned, maybe potentially having a meeting in the future, a community meeting,
yep,
whether it
exactly.
just be informational or just to discuss topics,
Yeah, correct.
that the
Agree.
citizens,
Yeah, exactly.
I believe that'd be a wonderful idea to have.
Yeah.
So, of course, I appreciate
All
your time.
right then. Well, thank you very much, Joseph. And I think that concludes everything we
Well,
wanted to cover for this webinar. Let us know if you got any questions. Oh, before we leave, will you kind of tell people that might be listening just how do they contact you? What's your email, etc.? Like, what's the best email for them to email? What's a good way to kind of communicate with you right now?
so the best way to communicate is through email. The email is KIC@kiowatribe.org. There will be a posting later on this week. I believe today's April 29th. So there will be a posting eventually later on this week where that contact information will be posted, for those that wish to reach out. So,
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. We'll save this and put it on YouTube. I'll say have a good
oh,
rest of your afternoon and hopefully get some lunch and get a little chance to wind down a little bit.
oh yeah, this I'm enjoying this rain, so
Yeah,
definitely
me
will enjoy it.
too. Me too. All right. Well, have a good afternoon, Joseph. Thank you for your time. Aho.
Thank you very much. Take care. Oh.